My name is Nick Moore. I'm part of the education staff here at the Louisiana Art and Science Museum. Today, we'd like to show you some features of the Ancient Egypt Gallery that you may not have noticed before. To do this, I'd like to introduce you to Natalie Roy. Natalie teaches Roman technology, myth makers, and Latin at Glasgow Middle School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She's a National Board Certified Teacher and was the 2021 Louisiana State Teacher of the Year. For the last 3 decades, she's been bringing her students to visit the Ancient Egypt Gallery here at the LASM, which she says is one of her favorite Louisiana museums. And frankly, we agree with her. Natalie?
Welcome to the Ancient Egypt Gallery. If you've been here before, challenge yourself to find something new or explore something different. Near the entrance of this gallery is a wall built like an ancient pyramid. Pyramids were large stone structures used as tombs or graves for kings, called pharaohs in ancient Egypt. On this sign, there's a large beetle called a scarab. Did you know that these beetles represented resurrection or new life? The ancient Egyptians associated these beetles with the sun god Ra, or Khepri, whom they thought made the earth new again every day with the rising of the sun. This gallery focuses on ancient Egypt around 5,000 years ago, but also on Roman Egypt. The Roman Empire controlled Egypt for almost 600 years around the turn of the millennium in the year 0. Let's take a look at some objects. In this case, you'll see a small glass container called a balsamarium. It was probably for perfume or maybe even eyeliner. The Romans liked to decorate their eyes in dark liners, just like the Egyptians. Containers like these were made of blown glass, a method developed in the Mediterranean. These items were very popular for cosmetics because they were light and beautiful. Can you see the small cup or skiphos with the owl on it? Owls were considered sacred to the ancient Greek goddess Athena, or Minerva. In Roman mythology, Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and household crafts like weaving. Because of this ancient connection, owls are still associated with wisdom today. In fact, have you heard the expression, wise old owl? The owl on this vase is surrounded by olive leaves from a tree made sacred by Athena when she gifted it to the city of Athens in a famous story about how the city got its name. The oil of olives was used by ancient people to cook with, bathe with, and to burn in their oil lamps. In this case, you'll see 3 different styles of death masks, all made for men. Mummy masks were placed on top of a mummy to represent what he or she looked like in real life. As the Greeks and Romans who lived in ancient Egypt became more familiar with mummification, they began to adopt certain aspects of that process for their own dead, including their own styles of mummy masks. Which of these masks do you think is the most Egyptian in style? What do you see that makes you say that? At 4,132 miles long, the Nile River is the longest river in the world, and it flows right through the middle of Egypt. The ancient Egyptians used the river to grow crops, travel, and transport stone for their pyramids. To build their pyramids, they used large barges to float granite and limestone down the river from Aswan, where the stone quarries were located. That's just north of Dender on the map. It was a long way. The Nile was, and still is today, a major part of life in Egypt. Many people still think that aliens built the pyramids, but scientists and archaeologists know this isn't true. From evidence found in and around the pyramids, we know that the Nile River played a huge role in pyramid construction. After the large stones were floated down the Nile from the quarry where they were cut out, the blocks were delivered to the area where the pyramids were being built. Then, using sleds and wooden rollers, skilled stone workers moved the huge stone block to the location of the pyramid. They may have even used olive oil to lubricate the rollers. A large clay and stone ramp built on the rising pyramids themselves served to slide the stones into higher and higher levels until they reached the top. Really, aliens had nothing to do with it. Before you walk into the mummy area, let's discuss how to do that. Even though our mummy has been dead a long time, we should show him some respect by walking quietly into his space. The passageway is supposed to be like entering an ancient tomb carved into a hillside for the burial of a regular person like you or me. Our mummy here at LASM is the body of a regular person, not a famous king or queen. Let's take a look. The Egyptians believed the person being buried should be comfortable in the afterlife, so he or she would have been buried with many special and expensive items, including a lot of gold. Since gold was often stolen from tombs, pyramid and tomb builders made the tomb very difficult to access after it was closed off. Unfortunately, these tactics did not work. All 3 of the major pyramids were broken into and robbed. Modern tomb raiders are still finding tombs to rob even today. Sadly, the tomb raiders are only interested in selling the artifacts they find. When people sell artifacts instead of giving them to museums, others miss out on learning about the ancient past. The body of this mummy is real. He has been dried out in a process called mummification. Due to this drying out, his facial features, including his hair and some of his skin, is still here for us to see. Before Rome took over Egypt in the 1st century CE, they did not mummify their dead. They cremated them, meaning they wrapped them up in beautiful cloth and burned their remains on a large platform called a pyre. After the fire had cooled, they collected the ashes and placed them in a special glass or clay vase. The vase was then placed in a small nook in a tomb, sometimes with the remains of other relatives nearby. For this reason, scientists who study the Romans don't have much information about their physical bodies. There are not many ancient Roman bodies to study. But after the Romans took over Egypt, they became interested in mummification and adapted some methods as their own. So I bet you're wondering what the mummy actually looked like. Well, with the help of some special scientists from Louisiana State University, we were able to peek into the past and find out. Here's Dr. Teresa Wilson to tell you more about their exciting discoveries.
I'm Dr. Wilson. I am the Assistant Director of the LSU Faces Lab. I am also a research professor at LSU. Typically, a forensic anthropologist will use the pelvis to determine somebody's age. However, because the mummy is still wrapped up, we are not able to actually look at those. In order to determine how old our mummy is, we need to look at the teeth, specifically the wisdom tooth. In our mummy, we do know that the wisdom tooth has completed growth, and that means that our mummy is at least 18 years old. In addition to the teeth, we can also look at the collarbone. The collarbone will actually stop growing at 22 years old. So we know, based on the x-rays, that our mummy is at least 22 years old. We also know that our mummy isn't very old and is probably no more than 35 years old because we do not have any arthritis in his bones. At the Faces Lab, we're able to put a face back onto a skull. How we do this is we take tissue depth markers and we place them onto the skull, and we use clay to fill in the gaps between the skull. Once we figure out how deep the tissue should be on different parts of the skull, then an artist will come back through and actually put the face back on. Now that we brought the mummy back to life, let's see how he was prepared for the afterlife.
Egyptian mummification is a drying out process that was performed by skilled priests called embalmers. It usually took about 70 days, or a little more than 2 months. First, organs like the brain, lungs, and intestines were removed and placed in canopic jars. These jars would be sealed and buried with the body. Do you wonder how they removed the brain? They used a long, skinny hook inserted up the nose to scramble the brains, and then allowed the liquid to slide out of the nose. After the liquid was removed from the body, the embalmers filled the body with natron, a type of salt used to dry things out. After the process of drying was complete, the body was wrapped with linen strips. Prayers were said during the wrapping, and amulets were placed to ward off evil. When the process was complete, the body would be placed in the tomb and covered with a cartonnage. There was one single organ that was not removed from the body during mummification, and that was the heart. The Egyptians believed that the heart was needed to account for the wrongdoings of a person, and that Anubis would weigh the heart of the person on a scale. Look carefully at the artwork where he is doing this task. Do you see him making sure that the scale is level using a small plumb bob or lead weight? The heart would be placed on one side of the scale, and the feather of truth would be placed against it. If the person had lived a life of goodness, his or her heart would be lighter than the feather. Can you see Anubis weighing someone's heart in the artwork on the wall? As you explore the gallery today, what do you see, think, and wonder about ancient Egypt? How were their lives similar, and how are they different from our lives today? What can you discover on your journey through the Ancient Egypt Gallery?